My name is Marwa Murgan. I'm a product experience strategist on the news team and one of the America's co-leads for the Arab Googlers ERG. Excuse me. This month, we're celebrating Arab Heritage Month, and we're celebrating with some great programming lined up. So make sure to check out go/Arab Googlers for more information. We're so excited to kick off the celebrations with today's guest, Yasmin Elhady. Yasmin is a comedian, a lawyer, a matchmaker. She wears so many hats. Yasmin has performed in several cities in the US. Sorry, I'm fasting, so this is happening. It's Ramadan as well. Most recently, she's been featured in True Story with Ed Helms and Randall Park, which is actually available for streaming on NBC's Peacock. Please join me in welcoming Yasmin and welcome Yasmin. Ramadan Kareem.
Ramadan Mubarak. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you. I'm stoked to be talking to Google. What up, Google? How y'all
We're so
doing? I'm
excited
really
to
into
have
this.
you.
Oh my God, I'm really into the search. I don't think it's a thing. I don't think it's really caught on, but that's like my life.
Well, you clearly do so many things and you wear so many
Yeah.
hats. So I want
Yeah.
to actually ask you about each one of them separately. And let's start with comedy. What got you into comedy?
Oh man. So to be honest with you, Marwa, it was Trump. President Trump got me into comedy. I'd always been kind of funny, and I reenact SNL skits. That was my thing. I remember my childhood, and my parents really wanted me to be an American as quick as possible. So they just put me in front of the TV a lot. And I was a six of six kid. So by the time they got to me, they were like, raise yourself. We're tired. Halas, please. So I would just watch a lot of TV and Saturday Night Live. I was watching Saturday Night Live since I was 6 years old. So I
Wow.
just thought and it was like the heyday at the time. It was in the 90s. So I was watching a lot of Phil Hartman and Chris Farley, and then the next, Adam Sandler, then the next wave hit, which was like Sherry O'Terry, Will Ferrell. And I really got into reenacting those things. So I would do little comedic skits all the time with my friends or at school just to survive usually because people didn't really take to me. They didn't know how to deal with me. I wore hijab since I was 8 years old, and my parents thought that was crazy, but I really wanted to do it, and we can talk more about that maybe later. But anywho, I'd always been kind of funny, and then they were like, hey, you should do stand-up comedy or whatever, and I was like, that's silly. I'm an immigrant. Like, I need a real job. Okay. Like if being a clown means I'm making like six figures and have a W-2, then I'm interested. Where's the health?
Sounds
Does
very
that come with health
relatable.
insurance? Like, is there a 401k? Like I was very focused as a kid on trying to get into a profession that a career that made sense as an immigrant myself, and that could create stability. But man, Trump changed so many things because I saw him in this crazy interview with Anderson Cooper where he says, Anderson Cooper asked him, what do you think about Islam? And he goes, I think Islam hates us. I thought, oh my goodness. It felt like it was like another, just like a mini tragedy that was happening
Mhm.
in my own life. It felt like here's this person talking about something that's so much bigger than himself and represents billions of people and has a history that eclipses that of the United States in such a serious way. We're not even 300 years old. Like we're a toddler among civilizations and countries. And then you have this like religion that's been here for like over a millennia. So it felt like I needed to be out in front of people. I needed to be on stage. And one of my coworkers told me about how funny I was, whatever. And I just realized maybe it's a good idea to be on stage and like expand people's brains about what Muslims are, who Muslims are, what Muslim women look like, what they do. And I just did one open mic in Bethesda, Maryland, and it's been history ever since. So that was in 2017. I've now been doing comedy almost for 5 years, and it's been great. I've had opportunities come my way, and I'm super blessed.
That's so wonderful to hear. I really like this part that you mentioned about, expanding people's brains and views. Um, and yeah, like I think comedy is a great medium to do that.
Yeah, comedy gets you to tell the truth in a way that's disarming. It helps people digest things without their defenses up, without them wanting to push back immediately. It's like if you're going to make me laugh, then I'm allowed to think in the background of my laughter. And that thought that happens in the background, that's I think where all the magic happens. That's where you move the needle on huge, you know, conceptions that society may have about the person who's presenting that comedy.
I love that so much. Um, I want to go back also to your other hats before we go into more about like talking about comedy. You're also a lawyer. Do you still practice law?
Full time. That is my full time job. I had to ask my boss for leave to be here. Yeah, I'm really just I've been blessed to be able to work in the public sector and to be in public service, and it's something that is very important to me from my background. But I don't know how long to be a lawyer. Again, there's like that part of me, you know, the immigrant part that's like dental insurance or follow my dreams.
I
You
was
know,
going to
so
ask you that question because, you know, like a lot of immigrant families are like that. They're like, oh, you either be a
yeah.
doctor or you'll be a
Oh, for
lawyer.
sure.
Is that
Oh,
why
for
you pick
sure.
law?
My mom asks me every day, she's like, Stanley, wait. You have how many degrees? Why are you living your life backwards? You want to be a clown on stage? Oh, I'm a clown. Put some makeup on. Oh, why? You have a degree. You have a job. خليكي محترمة في بيتك. She says, just be respectful. Just
Stay at
let
home.
you be a respectable person in your career. She's staying home, but she really means in your career, like in your lane, stay in your lane. But I'm like, no, mama, I want to play every song. I want to play every instrument in the band until someone's like, that's a bad tune. Put that down. Terrible.
Is she watching today?
She's of
Maybe.
course watching. And of course she's like, she's literally Egyptian moms, for those who don't know, are the most judgmental, loving, smart, judgmental women you'll ever meet.
Yeah, a lot of tough love.
Ton of it. Yeah.
I'm personally very curious to hear about your matchmaking career. What
Right.
does a matchmaker do in this day and age? I don't know if I'm lagging or you're lagging, but I think there might be a little bit of a delay. Sorry about that.
That's okay. I can hear you perfectly. I can't see you, like you're a little bit pixelated, but I can hear you, and it's reaching my
Okay.
heart. So I think that matchmaking part, yeah, the matchmaking part of it is a part of my career. I've officially retired, but like once a matchmaker, always a matchmaker. You know, so I helped. I've helped 55 couples get married, which is crazy. And I did that. I did the matchmaking for almost 14 years. So, you
Wow.
know, my at bats were really high. We're like, what's the rate on that? Like, I tried a lot more than 55 times. That's what you need to know. At least 4 times that much, probably, or at least 5 times that much. So, you know, I would say my success rate's like 1 in 5 or 1 in 6, even. But it's been something that came naturally to me. I realized I know how to talk to people, I know how to connect to people, and I also like can figure out what makes people tick pretty quickly. So I have a knack for like knowing what what personality types may be able to actually click, and it secrets out. It's got nothing to do with the horoscope. So just sit down with your little astrology, like,
Surprise.
well, this is Sag, you know, whatever, Virgo match. No, it's bigger than that. It's temperament. It's actually temperament. It's how people present themselves and their personality traits that I help people get to know each other. And really, it really just started as like an opportunity for people to just like develop new friendships. And I think that whenever you reduce the total pressure when people meet, like beautiful things can happen and blossom from that. I think that's like the fertile soil that like human connection drives from. So if it becomes love, amazing. If it doesn't become romantic love, then the hope it's like some kind of other human connection that can help people and make people feel less alone in their feelings. So that's how it really started. And my brother was my first match. It was so weird because he's like,
Wow.
why are you in my business? You know, he's my older brother. He's depicted in this in the Peacock, in NBC Peacock show, True Story with Ed Helms and Randall Park. You could see my brother there. He's my best friend. He's like my companion and everything. And I just felt like I knew him really well. So when I met a girl, I just like knew instantly. It was weird. It was like I knew instantly. So I got on the phone and I was like, hey, Hassan, I met your wife. And he's like, don't you think I need to meet her first? What is wrong with you, crazy girl? And I'm like, just trust me, bro. You just got to meet her, bro. And then he did, and then they've been married for 14 years and
Oh
have
wow,
and
that's
have kids.
impressive.
Yeah, so he's my first match, and well, they've been married for 15 years now. I just realized because I kind of like officially retired probably like a year or two ago. But I may revive that hat one day.
Yeah.
I feel like my kids are really young. Like I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, and it's a lot of time to help people get matched, including like phone calls at random hours of the night, like, but he said this, what does this mean? And like, can you please talk to my parents? This is ridiculous. It's a lot of that. And I feel like I'm a good connector and a good mediator. So I would give my time to do that. But man, with your kids, it's like, you gotta be really careful about your time. It's the one thing that you never get back. So I
Yeah,
try to be guarding about my time.
absolutely. I don't think like everyone who's watching the live stream might actually know how does matchmaking work in this modern day and age. So can you actually walk us through what
Sure.
happens from start to end?
Absolutely. So the way that I would do matchmaking is that I would, meet someone, and when I had a business for a while, so people would come to me and it'd be like, "Hey, I want to be a client." I'd be like, "Hey, you need therapy. Come see me in a year." Right? Or like
Oh,
they'd come and be like, "Hey, I really, I really want to get matched." And I'm like, "Do you want to get matched, or do your parents want to get you to match? Like, go figure that out. Come back to me in 6 months." Or someone would come to me and they're sad and they have a sad energy, and I'm like, are you really looking and feeling your best right now? If you're not, maybe you need to work on like getting a coach and getting that job that you want first and feeling complete, because I really stress that it's important to feel like if you're not whole, sometimes people don't feel whole. They are whole. I like try to stress that. Like the fact that you were born into this life, like you're whole. You've got all of the pieces inside of you that you need to succeed. You were born equipped with those things. And it's just about unlocking those things sometimes, and pushing away some of those self-limiting beliefs that you've had, or some of those judgments that other people placed upon you that told you couldn't do X, Y, or Z. But I really want to make sure that people, if they're not feeling whole, that they're on the path to wholeness, and they don't think that someone else is going to complete them, because they aren't. And that's too much weight to put on someone's shoulders. And they cannot be your everything. Stop it. They cannot be your best friend and the best lover you've ever had, and the person who's going to intellectually stimulate you, and the one that you're going to debate with, and the one that you're going to cuddle with. It's like, oh my God, don't we have friends and networks and societies that are supposed to like create communities of support for that? So that's my first step. I want to just get to assess people's feelings about who they are and whether they feel healed enough and good enough and worthy enough to be ready to step into love. And then
mhm.
after I usually would assess that with people, I just start thinking about the different types of personalities and temperaments that would go with that. So you could take a quiz. Obviously, if you're with me, I can pick it up usually very quickly. I'm like, "Are you like this kind of person? This is," and people are like, "Oh my God, that's so weird." And that's, people started calling me like, like I was like the answer, to a lot of their questions. But I'm not the silver bullet. I'm not the answer. You are the answer. You have the answer inside of you. You are your own silver bullet. And I try to just guide people into understanding how powerful they are, but also like what they are naturally maybe attracted to that's not great for them, or
Mhm.
maybe what would really complement them. So my entire matchmaking philosophy is based on complementarity, how to complement yourself instead of searching for yourself. And I think that everything right now in the social media sphere is about reproducing yourself, echo
Mhm.
chambering yourself, your own ideas, your own viewpoints and thought structures. And it's like, it's boring, guys. Like, are you going to expand that way? What are you learning exactly? And what biases are you just confirming over and over and over again? So I try my best to get people to come out of their comfort zone and think about, okay, what's a personality type that actually might complement mine, not clash, but complement
Mhm.
mine, where I feel like, oh, I can like get into this, a back and forth with somebody, and maybe disagree with them, but come out learning something new from that disagreement,
Yeah.
and respect the fact that we're going to be different. So I use a lot of John Gottman's research, because from the Gottman Institute, because he's a scientist and I love him, and he studied thousands of couples, successful couples, not successful couples, looked at fMRI studies for functional imaging of the brain, and he's seen like what happens in the happiest couples, or what happens in the ones that disagree the most, and actually can maybe predict divorce with 94% accuracy. I mean, it's crazy. If you look at his work, it says that around 69% of the disagreements between couples will remain intractable and will remain disagreements. The successful couples, the ones that are the longest lasting love, the longest lasting relationships, that have the highest self-reported happiness in their relationship, are those who can respect one another's differences and instead look at those 30%, 31% that's left over to say, that really holds me together. That I respect that so much. I see the positive in that so much that it brings me back home. He calls it the relationship foundation, that relationship house that you build. And that is really what I think predicts that success. So I try my best to work out what would be complementary to that person's personality. And I do the introductions, and I try to like step away. I do introductions and I step away. I'm not very heavy handed. And I always have a rule. So I have rules. I have rules of 3. So you have to at least meet 3 times before you're like, no, or like, yes, this is the person. Like, I want to get to know this person more. Because oftentimes that first meeting is full of nerves and you're not full of yourself. Or, or like you're trying to be something. And so you're like really smiley and like your face is hurting from how much you smile. And the other person's like, this is a robot. So so there's a lot of things that go on in that first meeting that I say, okay, give it a second meeting, give it a third meeting. That, in my opinion, is when you can really assess whether or not there is attraction there, that a spark of interest there that gets you to that next questioning stage. So that's what I usually do. And then I have other things. I have like a series of like 11 categories of compatibility that I talk about, and do like an assessment with people and make sure that they talk about the difficult questions, so that they're not making big life choices without talking about big life choices and how they make them and how they come up with their answers. And sometimes when people look at the question and be like, I haven't even asked myself these things. I'm like, right. So sit with that. Sit with that. Do you know who you are? And it's okay to also not know. It's okay to, and like that part about like having grace in a relationship. I could have answered this question a specific kind of way, and then we're married and something comes up. Wow, I'm going to react in a completely different way. And it's the grace, it's that flexibility and thinking, okay, is there a 31% there that I'm feeling really connected to this person with, that gets me to stop and think, I'm going to be forgiving about that. Because they didn't know. Because they weren't in that situation before. They've never been put in that situation. They gave me an estimation. Maybe they're not lying. Maybe they're not intentionally trying to pull the wool over my eyes. I'm talking so much about relationships. But started, Marwa.
I love it. I love it so much. But we can actually switch gears a little bit and maybe talk about your own experience growing up in a household, an immigrant household specifically. How did that impact your career? I'm sure it really shaped a lot of your comedy career, but I want to hear more from you about that.
I mean, look, all my comedy is about what I know. And so people are like, oh, your comedy is all about like your parents. I'm like, yeah, they're my best friends. Yeah, it is. It's a lot of my parents, or like your comedy is like so Muslim. Hey, guess what? I am so Muslim. Here I am, the most Muslimy Muslim. But like, it's okay. I just feel like the fact that people are scared, I think, to be fully themselves. That's what I want to push back against as much as possible with my comedy and with my lived experience, with the empowerment that I try to give to people. Because sometimes they feel like, well, that's not professional, or it doesn't have lasting power, or that's not going to be in the mainstream. I'm like, boo, then be yourself. And then the mainstream will meld to you. Be yourself, build it yourself. Don't rely on anyone else to tell you a message about who you are. So I do feel like that was a big message from my childhood, because my dad would always tell me, like, just be unique, be yourself, just do it. I'm like, that's a Nike ad, Dad, but okay. But, he's asking me to be weird, which was hard for a middle schooler. It's hard for a high schooler to hear that. But he was like, the most important thing is that, like, you do the right thing. If you do it and you do the right thing, you can put your head down. You say, I'm good. I'm good with God. I'm good with the world. I'm good with relationships. And I think that is probably the biggest thing that's informed my career. Just do it. Just be yourself. and be unique. And there's, and and I was like, you're telling me to be by myself? You're telling me to be weird? He's like, well, some of the most creative people in the world did it by themselves. What are you gonna do? Maybe, yeah, maybe. And I realized, yeah, like I think that's an engine of creativity and creation when you can figure out, I'm gonna reflect on this on my own for a little bit. And I get to find my own voice without anyone else telling me what
Hmm.
I need to be.
Yeah. But it takes a lot of courage and vulnerability to
Yes.
show up with your full self and share it with the public.
It does, and it takes thick skin. And I think that
Yes.
the only thing that has helped me, like I've gone through a lot of stuff in my life growing up in the South, and that's helped me have a much thicker skin. Like being booed out of a Walmart, being refused, service at a restaurant, having things thrown at me from pickup trucks, having people yell at me, break windows, assault me, attack me, physically attack me, to bring me down to the ground. And I think that those things can destroy you, and it's valid to work through those things. And it's valid to have therapy where I go every week, like therapy, right? It's important to be able to create space to feel the sadness of that,
Yeah.
but also to have the resilience that's associated with being able to get back up and say, yeah, that happened, but that doesn't have to happen to the next girl, or that doesn't have to happen to the next guy. It doesn't have to be this way. We can choose to be better. And I think that's a process. But I saw a lot of resilience in my parents because they lost everything, and they just worked so hard to be able to rebuild every part of their lives. And they're my best friends because they're my heroes, and I look up to them intensely as signs of staying true to who you are, and always believing, like, that change your worth. If you
Mhm.
accumulate a bunch of things, that doesn't change how you feel about yourself. You have to work on that first. And serving people and being in service of others is the greatest form of gratitude. And they've always taught me that when you're in gratitude, the universe will only increase you, only be increased in that state. So that's really informed everything that I've done. It's helped me take a lot of risks that I probably wouldn't have taken. And okay, if I bomb on stage, like, okay, really? Like, I've been bullied like incessantly. I don't really care if you have a problem with me or not. I'm still gonna be here, and I'm still gonna flex. You know.
I love that so much. But I'm curious to hear how your family and your parents actually think, like what do they think of the jokes, and how do they take you talking about their stories?
Well, my parents are like, "خلاص يعني, our voice is that funny? Stop doing it. Stop doing our voice. Get some new material. Goodness." So they're trolling. They troll me. But my brother is actually a huge supporter and has helped me like tweak and rewrite jokes. He's the mastermind. Mastermind. My brother's a mastermind. He's somebody I really respect. I take his opinion very seriously. And I think my mom and dad they've always been supportive as long as I can support myself. If that makes sense. They're like, we love everything you're doing, but like, can you put food on the table? Like, what is gonna,
Mhm.
like, don't ever touch that. Don't ever risk your ability to be able to pay rent, or take care of your kids or whatever. And they've been wildly supportive. I know that there's like, my mom makes fun of me saying I'm living my life backwards, which there's something to that. She's right. I'm living my teenage dreams, but like now, right?
Yeah.
But I think that sometimes there's an idea that like immigrant parents are just like not supportive. They just won't be behind you. They don't like love you just unconditionally. Like there's a lot of conditions to their love. But I honestly have to say that my parents love me unconditionally, and it's freaking amazing. And I wish that for everybody, and I want to be that for my children, and I want that for the next generations to feel. And they can give me their input about my choices, but they let me make my choices, which has been really great. And they've let me do that since I was really young. So
Yeah.
they've always been permissive parents. They've been like, these are the rules, and they're very like amorphous and out here. And then they kind of have let me develop, and including protecting me. to be able to develop, because people have, I have ADHD, and there were lots of teachers that wanted to put me on Ritalin or Adderall, and my parents just jumped in and they were like, no, say no to drugs. There, say no to drugs. Khalas, we're not going to give her any drugs. And I honestly, I mean, and of course, the medication is, you should follow, a physician's and a psychiatrist's recommendation, because everyone has a different level of issue, right, that they have to address. But I'm happy that my parents just sort of like let me be and let me work it out on my own. And again, not to look down on anybody who should be, looking to have medicative therapies to help them get through life. We want you to be good. We want you to be happy. We want you to be safe. That's what we want for you. That's how you get to show up to be yourself. But I feel like even things like that just help me just develop on my own and make my own mistakes, which has been very good for me.
I love that so much, and you touched on so many great points that, like, I want to ask you so many questions.
Yeah.
But specifically, I wanted to go back to the point that you mentioned about, taking care of yourself and supporting yourself and your family. And it is already difficult being an artist and putting yourself out there, but especially as someone who comes from so many underrepresented like minority identities. You're Arab, you're Muslim, you're a woman. What has it been like to be in comedy? How do you take care of yourself?
Hard. It's been
Yeah.
hard. I do feel that, I said that like the thick skin thing is a real thing. So because of my background, because I've had to deal with people literally like threatening my physical safety or being bullied. I feel like I always thought, like, for some people when they go through that, it breaks them. And like I said, that's a valid thing, right? But for me, it was always like, that's my mojo. Like, revenge will be palpable. It's like I knew that I was gonna come back stronger.
Mhm.
So I feel that being an underdog in comedy has helped me hone my skill and be better. I would love for it to have been easy, of course, but nothing in my life has just come like simple. And so there are some days that you feel sad about that. I do. And there's some days that I feel like, oh, I was passed up for this, or I'm not allowed to get into this club because they have a certain view about me. Or like I don't have the connects that other people have. So, it's normal, I think, to feel down, and you should give yourself space to do that. But it's like, I always give myself kind of like a time limit. Like, okay, you can feel down about that. What are you going to do in 3 days? What are you going to do next week? What are you going to do tomorrow about that to make it better? So I feel like that drive that comes really, I think, from my parents, like being like, okay, yeah, today you can't make rent. Okay, so how are we going to make rent tomorrow or next week? Or how are we going to do it? What are the jobs that we have to take on? So I do feel like that resilience comes from survival, and that has helped me a lot in comedy. I think that I've been really blessed to have some female comedians who have opened up doors for me, African American comedians that have opened up doors for me. I will say, like, the minority comedians have been the most open to me, and like Jewish American comedians being very open to me and opening doors for me. It's been really amazing to see that people who are kind of minorities are seeing me as an ally to them and as someone who's similarly situated. So they have been really, I think, pivotal for me to be able to keep going and like, hey, I'll put you on this open mic. Yeah, sure. Like, I don't know you, but I'm gonna give you a chance. I'll take a chance on you. And it's because maybe no one took a chance on them. So that definitely makes me want to do that. But it's been hard to get into bigger forums and achieve bigger success. But I do have my small successes, and I am so grateful for every single one of them. And I always try to give back. Anytime that something good happens in your life, my parents always taught me this, like, just give. Be in a state of giving. When something good happens, be in that state of giving, and that's that gratitude that we're talking about. Because when you give and you give thanks, and you give to someone maybe who is having a hard day, and that could be from a smile, a joke that you crack, to time and money that you invest in somebody who is in need. I think the universe rewards you with that more, rewards you with more goodness and more, feeling where your heart is full. So it's been tough, but I have been very humbled by seeing how other minorities have looked out for me.
Yeah, and when you also talk about giving and this kind of allyship between people from underrepresented groups, all in all, it made me think so much about mentorship and how
Mm.
um, I was personally lucky to have had a lot of mentors, and I found it very beneficial for me. And I was wondering if you have a similar experience that you could share with us.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I've searched a lot for mentorship. It's been hard to do that in the comedy community. There's a lot of people who rebuff you. You're like, hey, I have this thing. Can you ask, can you I have a question, or can you give me advice? I have this audition, and they'll just like shut you out. But I've
Mhm.
been really lucky. One particular person who comes to mind is Zainab Johnson, who is an amazing comedian. She is a Muslim African American comedian who is on Upload, an Amazon Prime series, and it's amazing. And she's also just like a regular in the comedy store and on the comedy scene. She's been on many different Netflix shows, this and that, and she's just been a really big mentor for me personally as a woman, and I think as she's a woman, she's a Muslim, she's African American. She has an incredible amount of like insight and wisdom that I am so grateful for her sharing with me.
Mm.
And I just haven't, like I said, like I haven't seen that all the time in other people who I've sought that mentorship from. And Selma Hindi, who is a Canadian American Muslim comedian, has also mentored me a lot. And she's younger than me, but I consider her a mentor. And I think that that's important too, like that we just like flip the script on like who gets to mentor who, or like who can talk to who. Like, get over yourself, like talk to people who are like caring and will give you their time. It doesn't matter what slice of society they come from. And but she's been amazing and has been very kind to me in helping me understand the ropes. But there are people who I like really look up to as well that I've never been able to talk to, but I like, God, I wish I could get him in a room. One of them is Joe Coy. Joe Coy is a very famous Filipino American comedian who I just like intensely respect, and I just have just like mad adoration for him, for how his grind, like his style, everything. I can't be him, but I just want to like talk to him and see what advice he would give to someone like myself. Sebastian Maniscalco is another one. He's an Italian American comedian who I just like really look up to. He was so honest. Like, he got on Fallon and he like forgot his whole set. Like, he gets a shot at late night, he's been doing it, and he just blanks out. And he talks about this and how Jimmy Fallon was like gracious enough to be like, it's okay, man. Like, let's redo this. And you can see the
Mm.
edit now. If you watch it, like, you can see where it happened, like the edit happened. But I just think that people who are real like that are just so inspiring. Of course, the GOAT, Dave Chappelle, just the greatest of all time. Just his mastery, his ability to be able to say what he wants to say, even if it's offensive, but it's his truth. So, like, even if I don't agree with him on everything that he says, it's just really inspiring to see somebody who is willing to put himself out there in that way, and be able to say his truth. And it doesn't have to be your truth. Like, we have this whole thing like, oh, my truth and your truth and whatever. But like, there's something to that where people are still talking about like alternate facts. Like, look, like it's somebody's lived experience, and I don't think you can say anything to someone's lived experience. But those are all like big inspirations for me. And Melissa McCarthy is another big inspiration for me. She's just a very funny, like, physical comedian who is able to take her style into the movies, and can do anything. She can play anything. She's someone I look up to as well.
I love that you were able to mention so many because I was going to ask you. Yeah, I feel like there are more and more names of comedians who come from minority backgrounds, and I think that wasn't the case like a
Yes.
while ago, maybe a decade ago. And
Yes.
I wanted to see what you think, what changed, and what I know. Like, I understand we obviously still have a long way to go, but what changed and what should change to foster, a more welcoming space for comedians from underrepresented communities.
Well, I think that social media has been a big democratization of process. And what I mean by that is like it used to be, and I had, I've had these really bad meetings with agents who are like, who are you? You're not some hot thing. Like you need to, like, okay, you're like a mom and like you're a Muslim. Like I can't make money off of you. Like what's so special about you? Like bad calls, right? Like I've had bad calls with agents, but then they'll say something at the end of that call and they'll go, but if you go viral, I can't
Mm,
stand it.
interesting.
But if you go viral, you don't have to answer to a gatekeeper like me. So
Yeah.
I think that there's something to that. I think that the democratization project of social media has allowed the people to speak about what they think is funny and what they think is worthy or whatever of additional time and additional stage time and stage space. So I think that has been a big thing. Social media has been a big mover and shaker of what would traditionally be, something that you could see on your local network TV or even on a streaming service. I think of Sarah Cooper, who was really created by the pandemic and by social media. She would do Trump. Um, Basically, she would do Trump reenactments. She would use his audio, and it was on TikTok, and she just went crazy viral. She would do his audio, but then she would act it out in funny way. Anyway, it was so good. Anyhow, so she's a comedian, a minority who came up using that particular medium to just rise to the top. So I think that's one thing. I think also like people are changing. There's some shifts going on in our society about consuming media that represents them, consuming entertainment that is more representative of their lived experience. And I think that has been a really great product of some of our social movements that we're going through as an American society. And I think, like, just like, the statement by Trump kind of like pushed me into this space. I don't I just don't think that I would have been doing it unless he was there. So I think that's a part of too what's happening. There's some reactions that are going on, some polarization that's happening in our society. Um, some good can come from that, but there's a lot of bad that comes from that. So we hope to try to get into the middle. But one of the things that I think are good is that people want to be more representative in the fashion that they consume and the comedy that they consume, and they want to have more representation in the things that they use every day. So
Hmm.
those are good things. Those are good things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you talk a lot about social media, and I see you're on TikTok, you're on
Yeah,
YouTube, you're on so
yeah,
many
yeah.
social platforms, and I've always been curious, what's your audience like? Is
Yeah.
it mostly Arabs and Muslim, or do you see uh, people from different backgrounds as well?
So it's kind of cool. My TikTok audience is totally different than my Instagram audience. So my Instagram audience is like heavily Muslim, heavily female, and my TikTok audience is like heavily all over the place. Like it's all over the age groups. It's all over different minorities and white people. Lots of white people follow me on TikTok, and a lot of folks who like kind of a split between men and women as well. So I
Mhm.
do feel like my TikTok audience looks a lot different, and I would love to be out in front of audiences that represent me. That makes me
Mhm.
feel good. But there's also an incredible amount of good to be in front of audiences that don't represent you and that are being exposed to you for the first time or maybe in a different way. So I'm like super grateful that I have that mix. I don't know. I don't have a very large YouTube audience. It's just like over 1,000 subscribers, but I haven't been able to look at the data on that. But it's been cool to see a different kind of growth on TikTok.
Yeah, for sure. I want to ask you a few more questions before
Sure,
we get to the YouTube questions. If anyone,
of
reminder
course.
actually to everyone who's following, if you have a question for Yasmin, feel free to post it in the YouTube chat. Um, but I want to ask you, I don't want to ask you the question that I usually dread and hate, like of like, where do you see yourself in 5 years or 10 years? But I want to ask you something different. So maybe like if you can share with us one or two things that you're excited about, and one or
Yeah.
two things that concern you.
Sure. Okay. So, one or two things that I'm pretty excited about is that I'll be doing a comedy at Tedx in Washington, D.C. at the Kennedy Center in the Eisenhower Theater on May 18th. Super excited about that. It's going to be a whole kind of new audience and an international streaming audience. So I'm excited about that. I'm super excited to, I'm a finalist for like a competition, like a comedy competition in writing and in learning how to pitch to major networks. So I'm so excited about that. I get to head out to New York. Thank you so much at the end of May to discuss, what are the next steps and how I can better tailor my writing to be able to reach a larger audience. So I'm really excited about that. Some of the things that concern me. Well, one of the things that concerns me, I think, is just that there's going to be another pandemic. The pandemic really messed me up the first time. Oh my God. And all those folks out there who have who are parents, you got kids. It's a dreadful experience to have with children. So it's just one of those things that's concerning to me. Like we're now, I think, entering into a state there that could happen. And obviously the obvious thing that concerns me, one of the major things that concerns me is our global refugee crisis.
Yeah.
That, this Ukrainian, with the Russian aggression on Ukraine, it's like adding to this refugee crisis. And, as a Muslim, I know that the global burden of refugees, we're 3/4 of the refugee population are Muslim. 3/4 of the global refugee burden are Muslim. Yeah. So it's sad. It's sad, period, that there's now a different group of people, an entire category of people that are being added to it. There's a lot of obviously criticism in the media about that. Like, oh, these are blonde, blue-eyed Christian, refugees. So they're getting more attention than those, uncivilized Muslim refugees. And I hear that, but it sucks for everybody. And I've lived that life. It's not pretty. Refugee life is a tough life. Our heart should be breaking for every refugee. Our heart should be breaking for everyone who's being pushed out of their homes, period, because of conflict. And, we know that's just a reality that is concerning for our future, whether that be, the occupying forces in Palestine, whether that be the unfortunate situation in the Ukraine, that is something that's concerning to me and something that I want my children to know that they have to really be aware of and give back to those kids that are going to be growing up without parents. It sucks. And for no reason except for power and greed.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. And yeah, it's very hard to definitely live through the reality of what's happening these days, but
yes.
Yeah.
But we just got to try to, we just really got to believe that, that we are better. We are better than that. And we get to teach our kids that we get to have a better future and that we get to, stand up and help those who are most in need.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned your kids a couple of times, and I'm so curious to know. Also, how do you juggle all of this with being a mother? Yeah,
absolutely. I don't juggle it well. Marwa, I'm a bad mom. I just want to put that out there, everybody. Okay, worst mom of the year, right here. No. Someone told me that if you think that you're a bad mom, you're probably doing a good job. So I just bank on that.
I agree with that.
Right, and that your kids aren't going to remember how many cupcakes you've perfectly made for their birthday party that's color coordinated, but how you make them feel.
Exactly. Don't be hard on yourself.
So I just love me, my kids, man. I love my kids. I love me some of my kids. Just spread them on toast. I could just eat them. Okay. I just love my kids. I could put them in a makeup, compact and just wear my kids. I just love them. And so I like to create, you're like, that's weird. That is actually dangerous. We're going to call Child Protective Services about the weird ways you want to consume and wear your children. But that's how I feel. And I think that they really show me joy in this unhinged way that reminds me of why we're here. And it's so beautiful to see their soul doing things. It's their spirit. My son does this weird dance move, and it's where did you get that? Nobody's ever done that dance move, Adam. So for me, the way I try to balance that is by creating restricted times that I jealously guard for my children. So, between these hours, no one messes with me. I don't touch my phone. I'm focused on those kids. And creating those boundaries are very important as much as you can. I know that some parents don't have that luxury. That's a luxury, and I'm so grateful for that privilege. But I think that you have to, as much as possible, create, like, I work in spurts. So I work, certain times and in time boxing. And that helps me with my ADHD. That helps me with my prioritization, and it helps me kind of guard this time with my kids. Because, like I said, the one thing you don't ever get back is your time. So you
I
have
could
to
use up all
jealously.
those tips. Keep
Yeah.
going, Yasmin. I need all of those tips about work and
Yeah. And,
balancing
and
your
you
time.
know, and as much as possible, your kids will get in a routine. They know what family time is, And my kid decided to do this in front of my boss. My boss was on like a Zoom, and he goes, "Can we play family now? Can we play family?" And my boss just looks at me, and he's like, "Is that what you're calling it these days?" I'm like, "It means there's time that we get to be a family."
Yeah.
So bye, click, and it was, I mean, I didn't actually do that. I didn't say bye. I wouldn't flex that hard, but I did say, "Can I go now and go play family?" He's like, "Go play family," and then it ended. So I think that's important, and your kids they're gonna pick up on that, because remember, your kids, they don't care what you say, they care about what you do. So they
Yeah,
are
100%.
watching you. They are watching you, and they're gonna learn how to be through you. So I always think about that. That helps me keep on the straight and narrow, not get
Yeah.
on stage and be like, "Ah," and say all these crazy things, that they're gonna have to Google
I think
later.
also with the pandemic, no, but also like with the pandemic, a lot of people, I think, yeah, it forced a lot of people to think about, like work-life balance and spending more time with their
Yes,
loved ones. I personally,
yes,
I feel like for me, it made a big difference.
absolutely. And it was such a special time for our family. We all got COVID. Thank you. Thanks, Cove. Thanks. But it was such a special time. Even in that, I think there was a blessing in that we got to spend this time close together.
Yeah.
Um, obviously so close that you want to also get also away, push out. You know what I mean? But push in, but also like lean out, not lean in.
Yeah.
Um, and that's healthy too. That's healthy too, to get your sanity back.
I appreciate that so much because like it comes up often, especially in conversations, around race and
Of course.
yeah, like and gender as well, that like a lot of women, for example, don't feel great about taking time off and spending time with their
Yes.
families. And a lot of people from like historically marginalized communities feel the same way. So I really appreciate that you're talking about that. And I think it's really important.
Yeah, go play family, guys, just like
Yeah.
everybody else gets to. And don't, and don't hold yourself to some kind of different standard. I know society might make you feel that way, but until you start carving that out for yourself, we're not going to shift society. We get to move it. We get to do it.
Yeah, I agree. I'm gonna like steal this question from a training that I attended
Yes.
last week, and they were asking who of your ancestors do you carry with you the most and why? And I thought that was a beautiful question. It made me think so much about my
Very
family.
beautiful. Very
Yeah,
beautiful.
I don't know if you have an answer.
Oh, I have an answer. Oh, I have an
Yes.
answer. My father has always told me that I was so much like his mother. So let me just tell you how much of a gangster my grandmother was. Okay. My grandmother in Libya, in Tripoli, had all of her children by herself, birthed herself, cut the umbilical cord by herself in a barn, and she wore an African Libyan garb that is basically, it's called a day, and it's basically a wrap around her whole body that nobody even knew. Her children did not know she was pregnant until they heard the screams of the baby, and then they're like, "Oh, we got a new sibling." So that woman was made of something special. She was titanium and steel and grit. And like, I'm just thinking of all the things that are really, steel is not a good one because that rusts. But I'm not a scientist. I'm a lawyer. But like, she was made of like the salt of the earth, and she was such a strong uniting figure for the family. She's someone who loved her children fiercely. She's someone who could do anything, and my father always tells me, "You are like her." How proud she would be of you today, to see you saying, I don't care what someone tells me I can or can't do because I know I can do that. And she was like that. So I carry her with me big time. She was somebody who was just had like a fierceness about her that I want to emulate
That's
and
very
make her proud.
beautiful. Thank you so much for
Yeah,
sharing. Yeah.
absolutely.
She must be proud.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I get to
Yeah.
meet her in a different place. You know, I didn't get to spend so much time with her. I only knew her as when she passed when I was 2. You know, so I
Oh,
only knew her when she from pictures, from photographs. But my father always told me that she loved me a lot. She always kept telling him, "She's special. She's special." So of course I love her. You know,
yeah, I think
God rest
like
his soul.
yeah, it's very beautiful, like, how for me it's the same way. Like it's a lot of the like and I think that's like the case for a lot of people. Like you feel like you also like have this bonding through a lot of like with a lot of people who you maybe didn't get to meet in your family from the
Through
stories
their
that you
memory.
memory alive.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Yeah.
Yes. They're still
Um,
very much alive. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And yeah, like it's also I don't know if you get to talk a lot like or at all about her in your comedy. Did you ever
I
mention her?
do.
Yeah.
I do. So I have a bit that no one has ever heard. It's not anywhere on the internet, but I've done it at like
Mm.
the DC Draft House Comedy Theater, and I did a whole thing about how because I was very pregnant when I was doing this bit. I was pregnant with my second son. I was talking about how this woman did it like she did it all. Like I could never be as cool as her, but I did birth my children naturally. And she was sort of the person that I kept thinking of, like, not even a generation ago. Chill out. You can do this. Because, I have a fused spine. I have scoliosis. So I can't take an epidural in my, no anesthesiologist will even do one for me. So they were like, hey, good luck, basically. And they were like, if you have to have an emergency C-section, you'll just go under general anesthesia. And I was like, no, I'm going to have these kids because other people have been doing it for thousands of years. I can do this. But anyhow, so I do a whole bit about that and like how it was to birth my children naturally, which I know is a lot for the Google audience. So maybe we can go to the audience questions, perhaps.
Honestly, for every audience, it's
They're
yeah,
like, can
like
you not talk about your birth story here? This is not TLC. Please
no,
stop
no,
it.
no, that's not what I
This is
meant. I
not what
meant
we
like
signed up for.
I meant like giving birth is a lot.
It is.
That's what I
It
meant.
is a lot. Woof! It's a lot.
Yeah.
Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. That is a sorority. That is a sorority that you get. That is woof. Anyways,
On this very happy note, I think we are going to take some of the
fantastic.
audience questions. Stephanie Gibbs asks, "Have you ever match made yourself, or this is like doctors make the worst patients?"
Yes, doctors
Love
do
it.
make the worst patients. I didn't match make myself. I feel like the universe conspired. My husband. This is my second husband. So I was married before. I was divorced. This is my second marriage, and I have 2 children with him. And he's wonderful. And I feel like the universe conspired because like I knew him for 2 years, and he kept trying to ask me like, "Hey, girl, like, shouldn't we be more than that?" And I was like, "No, no, no, no." I kept saying no, 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 and then it's like I got, and then it's like, oh, I'm like running away from this thing that is actually right for me. So I feel like the universe match made me, like forced me into seeing like, oh, it's been standing in front of me the whole time. That's how I feel about my marriage.
Love it, love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we have another question, right? From RuPaul. When and how did you know that law is the right career for you?
That's a great question. Not everyone knows what they're supposed to do. And it's okay for you to go into something and be like, this isn't for me. That's what I want to first say. But I had a feeling that law was the right fit for me. Actually, when I went overseas, I went and I did a graduate fellowship at the American University in Cairo after I graduated from college. And when I did that, it was amazing for me to see this society where it was very hard to get recourse. It was very hard to feel whole if you felt like something was offended or violated. And I remember just being like, I'd go to the AUC, the American University in Cairo, and there would be riot police outside. And I was like, why are these riot police out here for a bunch of kids, like a bunch of students talking about this political issue that was important to them? And I just felt I could feel the pressure. I could feel the pressure building in the country at the time. And this is before the Arab Spring. So this was around 2007. And I remember thinking like, well, I'm from a country that has a functioning judiciary. Now, does it always get the right, mix of justice? No. Does it have a mechanism inside of it to be able to review it? Yes, there's a checks and balances, and there's a review that happens every so often. Like, Martin Luther King Jr. said, there basically time, it's like it bends towards justice, right? The arc of time bends towards justice, but it just takes some time. And it's about these incremental changes, the incremental steps that happen. So I just felt very much like, well, I need to know what's going on, in the legal world, because those people underpin our society, and they give the freedom and the protections that we need to be able to organize outside of a school and give our particular political opinion on something. I thought, man, like, I'm obsessed with that First Amendment right. Like, I want to have the right to assemble. I want to have the right to free speech. And I realized, like, in that moment, like, man, I am pretty darn American. Like, I'm an American, everybody. Hey, everybody, American right here. So American. And I realized that that the law was going to be the right, I think, tool for me, a set of skills and a set of tools. That's what every career should be to accomplish whatever goal you want. So you have to think about your goals. Like, what are you trying to accomplish? And then your education is just about those tools. And some people don't need a formal education to get to what they want, and that's okay. But for me, as an immigrant, you better believe I needed as many letters behind my name to feel like I was like prepared with the right set of tools to get to the goal of being able to have stability and to be a really like a functioning member of society and a productive member of society, to have productive value. So it's like I got like that dose of what like a restrictive society looked like. And I didn't like it. I did not like it at all. And I applied for law school the next day. And I looked at the application. I was like, oh, I got to take this thing called the LSAT. I took the LSAT in Cairo, in Du'i, actually, at Emirates. I took, and like some guy like walks in, he's like, hey, Khalid, where are you? I'm like, we're taking an LSAT, get out of this room. Like, it was just so funny. Like people didn't, it's like, I don't know if that LSAT score would have counted in the United States. Thank God they just like moved us along. But there was like a lot of hustle and bustle is what I'm trying to say. Cairo is full of hustle and bustle. There's lots of people, lots of moving pieces. So I took the LSAT there, and then I applied, and I was fortunate enough to get into UCLA School of Law, and that's where I went. And Khalid Abou-Fadl, who is a professor there, part of now the Usuli Institute, was there, my mentor, and someone who really represents a perfect meld of that East and West, knows Arabic perfectly, was Azhari, but also has his PhD from Princeton, and went to, law school at Penn, and really had a nice grasp of understanding, like, what does this war on terror look like on Muslims, and like, how do we protect people's rights, and also understand the security needs, but like, is war ever justified? I mean, he asked big questions, and big questions about the religion that made me feel like this was the right place for me to go to law school. So to answer your question, I think you get to sit with your goals and figure out, are there people even in place in a particular school or in a particular area that could help me fashion the right tools to get there?
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing this, Yasmin. I think we have 1 minute left, so we might not be able to get to more questions, but I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us today. I really enjoyed talking to you, and good luck with your award. Good luck with the Tedx show.
Thank you. I appreciate you so much. It's been so lovely getting to know you. And thank you to everyone who's been interacting. Thank you to, Google for giving us this opportunity. And I really am wishing everyone a beautiful Arab Heritage Month, and to just remember where you came from to make us stronger together. That we get to also honor where we've been.
Thank you so much, Yasmin.
Absolutely.